This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rappin, and with me this week are two fantastic people. We're doing a very special minisode this week, so I'm joined by one of our regular guests, René Rodriguez.
Kamehame, how you doing?
And this week, we are joined by a very special guest, Daniel Martinez. Danny, could you give us an intro for us? Could you tell people about who you are and why you're here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mike. Well, I am, first of all, a listener of the IRCB podcast, and I've been one for a while. So thank you for having me.
Of course.
I also have my own comic books podcast called Next Issue Podcast. You can find that, on the internet. And I just kind of love talking about all kinds of nerdy stuff, comics, movies, and in this case, manga and anime.
Yeah, that's because today, I'm very happy that you're here. René, I'm very happy that you're here as well, because we're talking about a thing that I think all three of us love to death. We are talking about Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball Super. Maybe we'll touch on Dragon Ball GT, as well as all the various anime and video games and movies. We're talking about all things Akira Toriyama, Dragon Ball-oriented stuff. So, you guys, the question I have to ask now is, what really got you into Dragon Ball? I mean, everybody who's listening to this, if you don't know what Dragon Ball is, go do a Google search. I don't think I can succinctly express what it is. I mean, the baseline is it's a fighting manga all about Saiyans and aliens and Dragon Balls and wishes. There's way more to it than that. But so Danny, René, I guess I'm going to toss to you first, René. Could you tell us about what got you into Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z?
Yeah. So I am the youngest of 5 boys, which means that whatever my brothers were watching, I was watching. So I started watching DBZ around the age of 4. Just because, wow. I don't remember what channel it was on, but it was on this random basic cable channel that we had, and so we would watch it. It came on after church, and we had to actually, as soon as service was done, we had to rush home. We had to make sure that it was Mom, you're not talking to anybody. We got to get home. It's the Saiyan saga's happening, and
right.
This was the dub where instead of saying you killed him, it was oh, we sent him into another dimension.
Right, of course.
And so we would watch that because it would after that it was all Hercules and Xena, and then it switched. It
sounds like it was UPN or WB or something like that.
I think it was UPN. And,
okay.
So yeah, we watched it on that first, and then it moved to Toonami and on Cartoon Network, and then it just became I'd watch it at a friend's house every so often. And I didn't actually get into the manga until I started hanging out with my cousin after I moved from California to Michigan. And he had just one random volume. It was volume 4, which is the first fight between Goku and Vegeta. And he was like,
nice.
He's like, you should read this. It's dope. And I was like, okay. And it was awesome. And honestly, that was probably the volume of manga that made me be like, forget watching. Let's read this, because holy crap. And I actually still have that volume. But yeah, I just never looked back from that. And then it was just, when you could rent VHS tapes, DVDs, swipe some from your brother's friends, whatever. Then
normal stuff.
Yeah, when I got my first job, the first thing I bought with my paycheck was a Dragon Ball Z manga.
That's fantastic. And you've been a fan ever since.
Yeah. So, I mean, Dragon Ball Z is what, started my weeb journey, and I am forever grateful for it. So,
well, that's
no regrets.
That's an interesting way to put it, but I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that we have this in common. And, Danny, I got to cut over to you. I got to know what got you started on this whole thing, because I'm excited to tell my whole journey, but I got to know what happened with you. What made you fall in love with this crazy anime manga series?
Sure. Just a quick note. Let me know when we're going to get into GT so I can dip out.
I don't think we're going to touch GT. I think that was mostly a joke.
We got to at least talk about Vegeta's mustache.
Okay, maybe we'll touch on some funny bits, but I don't think we'll go into it too deep.
As listening to René, I could immediately tell I'm a little bit older than him. Because he said he was 4, and I was like, oh man, I've been watching Dragon Ball a little bit longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm originally from Mexico. So in Mexico, Dragon Ball was a big thing. Like anime is a big thing. It's uncensored. It's just you get the real good stuff. So I've been watching. I was
Oh,
watching.
okay.
Yeah, I was watching Dragon Ball probably when I was around 7 or 8, maybe younger. I really don't remember, but it was on. Every night we had a new episode, and then that kept rolling into Dragon Ball Z.
Hmm.
I remember in elementary school, like it was all the rage to like try to go to the school computer and print out Dragon Ball Z pictures and stuff. Um, but I actually didn't know about manga until maybe I was in my 20s or so. Like
Okay.
I didn't know that all these anime came from books. So when and even then Dragon Ball was not one of the ones that, because I've seen it so much, like whenever I was watching the anime, like I never thought, well, let me go back to the source material or anything like that. I was just like, give me more of this animated stuff.
Right, right.
Dragon Ball Super is the first thing that I've actually gone back and actually read the manga.
Okay. Okay. But since you were a little kid, you've been into this at some point, and then you discovered manga, and now you're reading Dragon Ball Super, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember going to like Ross, Dress for Less, or like, I don't think we had TJ Maxx back then, but like try to find tapes, or
Oh, okay.
we would swap VHS tapes so we could like record each other's tapes or whatever, because not everybody had everything recorded from Toonami.
Right, right.
So yeah, it's been kind of like gotta find it all. There was no streaming services back then, so I couldn't just go look it up.
Oh, of course. Well, it's interesting. I mean, that I didn't know that anime was that huge in Mexico. I had no idea. And the fact that you got to see the uncensored stuff, I mean, I think what they aired on Toonami was very censored, right? Like René was saying, like you blast them off to another dimension. Or I know that there's definitely some cuts of Dragon Ball Z in specific that has like, it's actually supposed to be pretty bloody, but when they showed it in the US, they had to edit it down like crazy, cut out entire portions of fights, and even go back and retouch over different things. Like I'm pretty sure when Piccolo blasts straight through Raditz and Goku, there's supposed to be a huge bloody hole, and I remember in the Toonami version, it definitely was just like, oh, he got burned really bad, and somehow so did Goku.
Yeah, I think they just they just like painted it black, and they were just like, we're not gonna really discuss it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the biggest difference is that the Ginyu Force went out a lot more violently in the uncut version than
right.
I remember in Toonami.
Right. Yeah, I mean, here I feel like they're a big, huge joke, but I think that they were actually formidable foes in the original anime, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But yeah, well, that's fantastic. I mean, and now you're here. We're talking about Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super. I mean, my origins in Dragon Ball Z it's very weird because I wasn't into it at all when I was younger. Some friends of mine, well, I guess that's probably not true. A friend of mine was really into it. Like I would go to his house and after school, and we would sit down and we watch Toonami for an hour. Like I'd go to his house just to watch TV. I definitely had it to like Cartoon Network at my house, but I never watched Toonami unless I was over at this guy's house. And we would sit down and we always wanted to be Saiyans and all this stuff. And even going through middle school, I remember I had like usernames that were like Super Saiyan 0986, Goku, Vegeta, or whatever. And I always thought that Trunks was like the coolest character ever. And then like my interest in anime and manga completely dipped off well before I even got into comic books. And I wasn't even aware of the manga version of Dragon Ball. I knew that there was manga because that same friend who really loved it, he collected all sorts of different stuff. I think he was collecting Love Hina at one point, which is like a harem manga. And for like a 12 or 13-year-old boy to be collecting that's kind of, I guess, I don't know, that's the target demographic, I guess, in some ways. But anyways, I didn't really get into the show again, I think, until college, when a friend of mine and I were like, hey, let's watch all of Dragon Ball. Let's go all the way from the beginning and watch all of Dragon Ball. And then when we get to Dragon Ball Z, we'll watch all of Dragon Ball Z, and we'll have said that we were able to watch it, and we watch all the movies and all this stuff. We didn't make it all the way through Dragon Ball. We got, I think, a third of the way through, and then realized that there were 9 more seasons, and they all involved Red Ribbon Army, and we were not interested in Red Ribbon Army at all. We just wanted to watch like the tournament fights. And so we skipped to the last season, which was all about the tournament before Goku, he grows up and he's kind of a little bit older and he has this big fight and Piccolo's there and Tien Shinhan and all that stuff. And then we started to watch Dragon Ball Z, and then I would just start falling asleep while we were watching it. And that was like my last foray into Dragon Ball until probably like 3 or 4 years ago. I met some people that were really into Dragon Ball Z and just really into manga in general. And I'd started to open my eyes a little bit more to manga. And I read, I started watching Dragon Ball Z Kai. And I got 3/4 of the way through it. And then the last fight, like with the androids and like the Cell games and all the stuff with Boo, I was just like, oh my God, this is taking forever to watch. And so I just jumped on Comixology and I read all the last volumes of Dragon Ball Z because I really wanted to get caught up for Super, because I think Resurrection F had just come out and I just wanted to get caught up. And then, of course, I continued reading through all of that. I watched the movies and then I jumped right into Super. I haven't watched any of the Super anime because I heard it's not great, but yeah, I've been very much into like this thing in the last few years has rekindled my love for the series. As I remember having a really good time in watching the show and not realizing how long it took for each episode to go through, or to actually pass. And so reading the manga was really, really great because it's, reading comics in general, you take it at your own pace. And so, yeah, I've gotten very much into it, and like rekindling all these old memories has caused me to buy all sorts of stuff that I probably wouldn't have bought like even 10 years ago as a college kid. So yeah, action figures and t-shirts and stuff like that. But yeah, so I guess, we've all been, I guess, pretty big fans, I guess, on the whole, since we were younger. I guess the question now is, why do you guys like this series? What is it that draws you to Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball Super? Why do you keep reading these comics that are kind of the same thing over and over and over, and yet it's different somehow? I guess I'll pitch back to you, Danny. What keeps you reading and wanting to keep reading Dragon Ball?
Yeah, I think as a kid, it was really a lot of the, the flashy stuff with the big attacks and the violence and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But as I've gotten older, like, I've gone back and rewatched it. I probably do a rewatch every couple of years of at least Dragon Ball Z. Mm-hmm. But, when we got Dragon Ball Z Kai, that was like a godsend, because it's like, this is the way it was really supposed to be without all the, as much as I enjoyed all the filler stuff in the first watch through, like, it's not something I want to revisit all the time. Like, I don't care about that other world tournament that doesn't exist.
Right, right.
But I think the characters, like, when you go back and draw a line, especially, and I'm going to bring up Vegeta because I think he's the best character in Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super. Like, his evolution, along with everybody else, but his evolution, really, you can really tell that he's been on a journey, and it's especially when you put him against a foil like Goku, who, as much as, he's changed a little bit, but he's really the same character, even from Dragon Ball,
Yeah.
So just seeing that comparison and then expanding, at this point, it's like, these are old friends and you want to know where their story's going. Yeah. So every time they would announce, like, René and I were talking a little bit before recording when you were, getting water, about the little movie for the anniversary where they introduced Vegeta's little brother and Apollo and Kato. Mm-hmm. So every time they dropped a little bit of new content, especially after, being burned by GT a little bit, it was just like, give me a little bit more. Let me know, what are these people up to now? How are they changing? How are they evolving? Like, I really wanted to see Vegeta as a family man because it's so different, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's what keeps me going back. These are like old friends that I kind of want to revisit now.
Yeah, I totally get that. What about you, René? What keeps you reading Dragon Ball?
So growing up, I was always really into martial arts films and like action movies. Like, my dad, he was super into them, and he really looked up to Bruce Lee. So we watched all the Bruce Lee films, Jackie Chan films, and just like any martial arts thing, Mortal Kombat, despite how like maybe not good they were. Like, we still quote Street Fighter with Jean-Claude Van Damme Like to this day, that movie is terrible, but also I will probably watch it like right after this.
Right. I get you.
But I mean, so I grew up, watching martial arts stuff, and my brothers and I were in martial arts classes, and so like you're 5 boys who can try to beat the crap out of each other because you're all relatively the same size for a while at least. So I loved the idea of fighting, and then there's this series that is just pretty like, at least when you were a kid, it seemed like it was nothing but fighting. There's always more and more fighting. You didn't really realize how long they screamed until you grew up.
Right. Yeah.
I think it took me to the Garlic Jr. saga to really realize, like, there was a whole like episode and a half where Piccolo's just screaming, and like I was like, this is a long time. But I really loved martial arts, and the way that like that was what caught my attention. Was I was like, it's all about fighting. And when I read that manga, that volume 4, and like just sort of watching or like looking at the panels, the way that Akira Toriyama just studied movement, and everything moves really quickly, and like the panels and the way everything is drawn has a natural flow to it that you can follow, and it almost feels like they're obviously it's just ink on a piece of paper, and yet somehow it feels like it's alive. And that constant rush, that keeps me watching these old terrible action movies, also makes me want to keep reading Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. And also I'm always going to be a forever child, like Nizuma Eji. So I mean, all of the gags in Dragon Ball that are even dumb, like even the rabbit that he sends to the moon, and that's where they get moon cakes. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And to this day, if I see anything that has to do with mooncakes, I'm like, oh, obviously it was made by the rabbit that Goku trapped on the moon. It's silly, but I am pleased. It doesn't take a lot to please me. So
yeah.
But I mean, Dragon Ball is so good at what it does. And it's just, it just makes me I get that sort of, it's part nostalgia, but also just part like, man, this is so well done. That keeps me wanting to reread it over and over again. Plus, it's a nice palate cleanser when you're in between stuff.
Well, I mean, the downside is if you're reading Dragon Ball Super like we are, week to week at this point, I think it's a pain in the ass that you have to wait a whole month for a single issue. But you know what? I'm willing to wait for it because it is that fantastic.
So you just got to get over that. You just got to.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten over it.
And deal with it. And
believe me, I've got One Piece to read. It's totally fine.
Man,
but yeah, I mean, I feel like I agree. I definitely agree with you guys. Like, this series is something that it's got like a nostalgia factor. It just feels really good. Like I like the way that you put it, Danny. Like this is like seeing old friends and seeing what's happened to them. And the fact that this series continues to go on, with Super coming back, I hope that the manga is still wildly popular. I have to imagine that it is. Otherwise they wouldn't have made it to, 60 plus issues. And so I think that seeing the characters evolve as if you're someone like me who binged a lot of stuff really, really quickly, and you watch people or the characters, go from just powering up to learning the Kamehameha to, Super Saiyan 2, and then beyond. I mean, we're not going to go into the crazy weird GT stuff yet, but to see those characters grow. And the thing that always kept me in the series, that especially on my most recent binge of everything, was this constant rivalry between Vegeta and Goku, and how they are both considered they're considered the last Saiyans alive until the story needs another Saiyan to be alive. But as far as the story, usually is concerned, they are the last two. And so to see them as the most powerful and constantly trying to one up each other, I always liked that rivalry because I felt like it's a healthy rivalry where they're not trying to kill each other. They're just trying to outdo each other because they want to be the best. And in more recent, issues, especially of Super, where Goku and Vegeta have split up to the point where they're like, I know that the only way that we can win this thing is if we work together, but we refuse to, is probably some of the most compelling work that I've seen from the series, at least from Super, in a while. And yeah, which I guess kind of brings me to the next point that I wanted to get to, which is, we find the series compelling. We keep coming back to it. I mean, what are some of your favorite bits of Dragon Ball? And, from Dragon Ball all the way through Super, like, what are some of your favorite moments? And we'll include some of the movies. I know a lot of the movies out there aren't in canon, but, with the new Broly movie, who knows what's going to happen after the new Broly movie, I should say. Who knows what other old Dragon Ball cinematic things they're actually going to bring back into the universe and say this is canon versus this is not, because as far as we're concerned, GT didn't happen, at least in canon, and so we need to just move on from that. But I guess, what are your favorite moments from the series?
I mean, I could take a crack at this.
Yeah,
you want? You brought up the Broly movie, and kind of preparation for this, because I'm a consummate professional, I forced myself to rewatch all the movies again.
I'm so sorry you had to do that. I'm really sorry.
I'm willing to go that extra mile. I even watched the uncut version of Battle of Gods, which has 20 minutes longer of fighting. And
really, I didn't know that existed.
That sounds great.
I found it while I was trying to. So that was one of the movies that I wasn't able to buy on Blu-ray because it sold out immediately. Well, at least the one I wanted, the collector's edition thing. So I was looking for it this weekend, and I was like, wait a minute, this is an uncut version of this? Oh, I'm watching that. And after watching Super, like, you realize that they changed a little bit from the movie. I mean, they changed. I guess the movie came out when there was no manga, right?
Right.
So they changed the manga adaptation and the Super adaptation of that story and of the Frieza story. But I think this trilogy of movies, like, it could be its own thing. Like, even if we never got Super, like, these three movies have just been, like, it feels like the pinnacle of what everything in Dragon Ball has been building up to, especially this last movie with Broly. I mean,
yeah, if we're talking Resurrection F, Battle of the Gods, and Broly.
Yeah, because the Broly movie, I watched it 3 times that week that it came out in theaters.
Holy smokes, dude. You can deal with that much yelling in your ear?
Don't you listen to metal?
Good.
I mean, yes, but it's not just the guy going for 40 minutes straight. Sorry, Danny, go ahead.
The original movies have some of the best soundtrack. Like the original songs that they compose for the movies, they're really good.
Those movies are killer. They are top-notch quality anime as far as I'm concerned.
The Broly theme in the last movie, it's like I listen to that on its own, like when I'm reading stuff. Like, it's just really good. But once we obviously they retcon a little bit of Dragon Ball Z at the end because that's not what happens at the end. So it's always fun to kind of see what things they changed.
Mm-hmm.
But the introduction of Beerus and Whis, like, those are 2 of my favorite characters in all of Dragon Ball, and they're just so brand new, but they're so different. So just knowing that they can still go and take us places, like, that's pretty exciting. And it's if we didn't get any more Dragon Ball Z, like, I would be really happy with just the last 3 movies that we've gotten.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, Renee, do you have any favorite bits? I mean, in recent memory, I guess, because we don't necessarily have to go through the whole series, but I guess recent memory.
I was going to say, I was like, how much time do we have?
Yeah, I figured that. Maybe we should keep it a little bit more recent.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, you were like, throughout the whole series in Dragon Ball, I was like, oh God, where to start?
Unless this episode is a one shot, and if people like it, we'll do like a mini, like, we'll get added to the weekly jump.
Boy, okay.
Okay, so first of all, I feel like I should say this because I believe that this is what is true, but the Super anime, the Super manga, and the movies are actually all separate canons. So they're all like separate universes. So like, because the movie came out first, then from the success of the movie, they decided they were going to do the manga. Then everybody was excited for the manga. And they were like, well, we're going to do the anime. And then the anime does start out really rough and then gets better, and the animation got a lot better and whatnot. And they just were like, well, let's do another movie. And then they did 2 more movies. And then they were like, well, let's do the Broly movie. And so I believe that the new Broly movie cancels out the older Broly movies, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it also is in the new vein of the new movies type canon. But they're also separate from the anime and the manga because the anime has stuff that the manga doesn't.
Right.
And
Well, what's interesting about that is that it's so funny because they allude to things that happen in the movies in the manga to just kind of shortcut away having to explain why Whis and various
Beerus.
characters exist. Yeah, and Beerus, thank you, exist, and as well as having to explain, oh well, he turned Super Saiyan God in way back when we did that thing, and it's just a one-line bubble, so it's funny that they do that.
I think it's also funny because because Akira Toriyama wrote the movies, so I think he wrote the first one. I think he wrote the movies, and then I don't know if he was planning to do the anime or to do the manga series. And I think that I don't know if he writes for the anime, but I think he's definitely a consultant for it.
Oh, for sure.
But anyways, so I just wanted to throw that out there. But I would say the most memorable thing from recent years is actually from, I think it's in Resurrection F. Maybe it's in Battle of the Gods. I think it's in Battle of the Gods, but it's when they show that Crillon is a police officer. And after he stops a crime, his cell phone rings, and it's the One Piece intro song.
Oh, I did not even catch that. Oh my goodness.
That's really funny because the person that voices Krillin in Japanese is also the voice of Monkey D. Luffy. And so
oh, no way.
When I heard it, because I watched it subbed with my best friend, we both started dying. And I was like, that is beautiful. I don't even care about the rest of the movie. I'm obviously going to watch it, but I was like, that's my top moment. That's my top moment from the recent ones.
That's great.
What about you, Mike? What's most memorable?
I mean, I've been thinking about it. I mean, I think, Vegeta and Goku, like the thing that I mentioned earlier, the two of them realizing that they, Whis is like, oh, if you guys just, work together and you became Vegito or Gogeta or whatever they call it, you could be the most powerful being. And they're like, no, we have to do it individually. That's been like a core thing for me that I've really liked about the series, which has led to the stuff that they're doing right now, where Vegeta has gone off and he's training on his own, and Goku is trying to find this perfect instinct. I mean, I love the way that they're developing the characters right now, but I think Jiren was probably one of my favorite pseudo villains of recent history, where the fight where he is so absolutely strong and he's unbeatable, and it's just a matter of sheer strength. It's not like Moro where he's stealing people's power or anything like that. It is just straight up, you have to be stronger than this guy to beat him, and no one is possibly stronger than him. And to see Goku and Vegeta trying to go back and forth, and meanwhile we've got Piccolo and Tien and everybody sitting on the sidelines. They're just like, how are these guys even? We could never even keep up. We'd be dead right now. I think that it's a really funny thing to see the meta commentary from the side characters, even someone like Gohan, comment on how powerful these guys have become. And I think my favorite joke is that Gohan is off teaching school, and that's why he hasn't been practicing his fighting. Is just ridiculous to me. Because I think for a while, the story seemed like it was leaning on Gohan was going to be the next major character. And René, you probably can correct me on this. But then,
no, that's right.
Yeah, and so so he was going to be the next major character, but the fans were like, no, we want Goku, and then Gohan just disappears. Actually, after the Cell Saga, it's fantastic.
Actually, what happened is that Gohan was supposed to be the main character. He was supposed to take over, and then as he was writing him, Toriyama was like, "He's just not that character. He doesn't like fighting. He's not that guy." So it was Toriyama himself who was like,
"Okay,
it's not Gohan." But he's said a couple of times that they're like, when people are like, "Who's the strongest in the Dragon Ball Z universe?" He's like, Gohan. Gohan's got the most potential. That's why at the end of Z, there's a bunch of times in Dragon Ball Z where they're like, Gohan's got this untapped potential, but he's like, I like physics.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so funny because, like you said, that people say that so often through the manga and the anime and everything, and the fact that he's just like, no, I don't want to fight, because you're right. To that point, Gohan is constantly just like, yeah, Dad, I don't want to fight. Actually, I kind of just want to go to school and be a regular kid. Which kind of begs the question, what does Goten want to do? Which he seems to want to fight, but that's maybe just a thing of being a little kid, because him and young Trunks are probably some of the funniest things in the series. And they're so unbelievably strong at such a young age. It harkens back to the idea of Goku being that strong, but they can go Super Saiyan and they can, do the fusion dance and all that stuff without even having to worry about it. I also love that about the series. But I mean, we could go on and on and on. If I had to say it, though, I think Jiren is probably one of the most interesting pieces of story in the middle of this. Very clearly, we just need to pad out issues and we need to tell a story of people fighting tournament saga that they did before the Moro stuff happened, which I really like. But
could I bring up another quick highlight too?
Yeah.
When Vegeta first meets Beerus and he has to distract them from destroying the world.
Oh, jeez,
Pete. Doing the bingo dance.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
In Battle of Gods, I lost it. I was like, oh, this is how strong this person is, that even Vegeta is willing to, put all his pride aside. And it was hilarious when he was doing the little dance on the stage and trying to distract them from, destroying the Earth because he couldn't have any fighting.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I mean, again, and this is like the constant role and movement of the series to show that these characters can have all of these weird angles, and when they do break who they actually are, it becomes really entertaining manga. I mean, it's a constant question that I think creators who have been making manga in specific for a really long time, how do you continue to make your story interesting? And I think Dragon Ball suffers from the problem that everyone makes fun of anime and all this stuff for, especially here in like the Western world of just constant power battles and people leveling up and being more powerful. Dragon Ball is the reason why we have that, I think, in a lot of ways. And now it's kind of a question of how does Dragon Ball Super take that and twist it on its head? And I think things like that, where you've got Vegeta doing a dance in front of this all-powerful god simply to make sure that he doesn't destroy the world. I mean, that's really, really funny. And it's also a showing that, this character can actually swallow his pride for the sake of the universe. Yeah. Which I think at that point in the movie, we were all kind of wondering, is Vegeta really going to do this? Because we know how prideful he is. Will he actually bring himself down a peg? So there was actual genuine risk there, I think.
I really enjoy that they brought the Galactic Patrolman into the most recent arc. Mm-hmm. Because I actually hadn't been following Super, and then I was like, I'll decide to read a random chapter, and then Jocko's in there, and I was like, excuse you? I know he's shown up in Dragon Ball before, but I was like, hold up, mm-hmm. hold up. You're telling me that Jocko, the Galactic Patrolman, is in Dragon Ball Super? Oh, man. I'm so in. Yeah. In Flynn. And it's great.
He's got his own little mini series too, right?
Yeah, it was 11 issues or something. He's got a single volume. It was one of the series that a little one shot thing that, or not one shot, but a mini series that he did. There's also a series called Sandland, which I believe you can read both of them on the Shonen Jump app. I think. I know you can do Sandland. I don't know about Jocko, but.
Yeah, I've seen Jocko a couple times on the Shonen Jump app.
We read Jocko for a book club once, a couple years ago, and I knew it was by Akira Toriyama, but I didn't know it was connected to Dragon Ball. So when you get to sorry, spoilers for the Jocko series, when you get to the last few pages, you find out that girl is Bulma's sister, and I was like, what? More Dragon Ball? I lost my shit at the end of that when we were reading.
Yeah, I mean, and to go beyond just, the Dragon Ball series, I mean, there's all sorts of weird stuff out there that exists, all the video games kind of take canon into their own control and do whatever they want. I know that there's another android character that got created that I've seen action figures of and all sorts of strangely lewd art of. It's she looks like Boo, but she's supposedly an android, and she's got a weird tube top thing, but she's got a big stretched out head like Boo. I think it's Android 21 or something. Is
that the Android, or is that the new Ginyu Force person from the new game from Kakarot?
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, Googling it, there's mixed results because Android 21 turns. Yeah, I mean, if you search Android 21, she shows up in Dragon Ball Fighter Z, and she transforms into this, I guess, pink skinned, like I guess she has white hair. That's what it is.
Okay, from that game. Oh,
yeah.
okay, I know who. Yeah,
Let me turn on safe search.
Yeah, to definitely turn on safe search for this one. I mean, but there's all that, and I mean, like the Kakarot game does its own thing to try to tell the story a little bit differently. Because that game goes through like a lot of Dragon Ball Z and actually has you play through the various fights and stuff. If I'm not mistaken, and then there's the series that I love to death, which is I was reincarnated as Yamcha. That probably one of the funniest 3-issue miniseries I've ever read, where a kid who's going to school knows everything about Dragon Ball Z. He supposedly dies or he falls down the stairs or something like that, whatever trope you need to start one of these reincarnated stories. And he wakes up and he's Yamcha right before he's supposed to get killed. I think is it by Raditz?
he dies by a Cyberman.
Yeah, right before he's supposed to get killed, and so he powers himself up and is able to survive, and he continues to survive on and on and on in all these places where Yamcha was supposed to die or shouldn't have been as powerful as Goku and Vegeta. And it's a really goofy, fun little 3-chapter series that you can read. I think you can read the whole run for free on the Shonen Jump app.
Yeah.
But man, I grabbed that really quick, and it was such a fun little thing.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun too. I remember reading that.
But I guess, like, I this kind of comes back to a thing that I said before. Dragon Ball in general is kind of about power levels. It's the manga about power levels. How does it continue to work for you guys? I mean, for me, I think I've kind of expressed it. Like I like the rivalry. I like the constant trying to outdo each other portion of it. But is that the same reason that keeps you guys reading with this kind of same story over and over and over, beyond the stuff like goofy jokes and everything, but like this core element of power levels? Does that still work for you guys as you read the story?
Yeah, I think and I'm gonna go a little bit into spoilers for the current Dragon Ball Super. They found a new enemy that Moro, he has, I want to say, kind of magic based powers, which is always kind of a good trope to kind of take someone down that's really powerful. Superman, he's weak to magic. Same thing with Goku and Vegeta. They can't just they can't just power up and beat this guy. So they each go and kind of do their own type of training that, like you mentioned. And Vegeta finally realizes that he has to do a different kind of training if he ever wants to surpass Goku. Mm-hmm, so he goes to planet Jardra, where Goku learned instant transmission, because their techniques are more spirit based or the ki based. So he figures he can be a better fighter by training a different way, as opposed to Goku that just wants to kind of master the Ultra Instinct. So seeing their approach and seeing the fact that these characters can still take a turn like that, that makes me interested. Like I mentioned, I hadn't really read the manga ongoing until now, because I was like, well, I have the Shonen Jump app. We're not getting any animated Dragon Ball Super for a long time, because I was only watching the Funimation dub. Sorry, René. I try not to watch
I don't care. I was like, watch what you want to watch. You can do other stuff while watching dubs. I mean, with subs, you got to be right at the screen.
Right. This is my problem with My Hero Academia, is that if I only want to watch it in subs, because for some reason, anyways, totally unrelated. Go back to what you're talking about, Danny.
That's another Minisode.
Yeah, that's a totally different thing.
For sure. How we were delayed with the dub for a few weeks. Oh, that was hell. Anyways, but yeah, so just the fact that they can still change the characters like these, and they can take different approaches to the story. I love that Master Roshi shows up for everything now. Like, he's still a badass kicking ass just after all these.
Yeah, he somehow still has secrets in his pocket, that he can somehow still be buff and fight people.
Well, he drank from that water from that well, right, when he was younger. So.
Oh yeah, true.
A long time ago. So I mean, Akira Toriyama is still doing stuff to kind of challenge the characters, and challenge who they are up until this point. So I think that's what really gets me going, or it keeps me reading. the art is still amazing, even though it's not him anymore. Like, and I don't have the name of the artist, but so I apologize. But he's really good at having that same style of Dragon Ball Super and Dragon Ball Z. But I feel like he still adds his own, well, their own. I don't even know if it's a guy. They just add their own flair to it. Like the art is still top notch, I think, in the manga.
Yeah, the artist for that is Toyotaru, or excuse me, Toyotaru. I'm butchering the name. I'm sorry, but yeah, he's definitely able to capture the same look and feel, but still make it his own a little bit, which I very much enjoy. But René, what keeps you coming back, to Dragon Ball? If it's not just the gags and stuff, because I feel like Super doesn't have nearly as many gags as you would expect, from Dragon Ball in general, especially when we're talking about Dragon Ball way back in the day, and Dragon Ball Z, I think, still had quite a few gags throughout. I think Super's really toned that back because it's just about fight after fight after prep after fight,
Yeah. At this point, I'm just reading it just to support Akira Toriyama. I'm going to be honest with you. I actually think that my friend and I have had this conversation a lot. I generally didn't really care about Super a whole lot. Mm-hmm. I was like, look, it's just supporting Akira Toriyama. I think he's a brilliant storyteller, and I wouldn't like half of the things that I like without Dragon Ball, and I still think Dragon Ball, like even the original Dragon Ball series, which I highly recommend you read it instead of watching it. Like the anime is great in its own sense, but reading it, you get a whole different perspective of of the story. I think the Goku versus King Piccolo's and Goku versus Tien Shinhan is some of the best fights in the series overall. But I mean, I keep reading it, one, because to support Akira Toriyama, and then the other one is that, like, I am at least a little bit curious to see what happens and whatnot, and whether or not it keeps my attention is what it is. But I mean, especially when you were talking about the power level thing, that never really bothered me, because it was like, how are you gonna overcome this seemingly insurmountable thing that's in your way? Like when it started in the Saiyan saga, like Raditz was so strong to them, and they were like, man, that's crazy. And everybody in Dragon Ball at least seemed within reach. And then to know that there were people that, like, they trained for a whole year, and then the Saiyans still outclassed them. And then during the Frieza saga, like, they kept throwing their meanest stuff at him. There were multiple people just fighting him, and like Frieza was like not even phased. And they were like, what are we going to do? And then, obviously when Super Saiyan happened, everybody went nuts, because nobody had seen something like that before. And it was like, holy crap.
Yep.
Right.
Game changer, bro. Whoa. And then, obviously it became, Gohan became Super Saiyan 2. Then it was just like, oh, is there something beyond? What's it going to look like? Is it cool? Is it as cool? And I know that we talked about GT a little bit, and I will admit that I thought Super Saiyan 4, I thought that was the dopest thing I'd ever seen, but I was also like 14, so like, I also thought Grind was like the greatest movie I'd ever seen, and so take everything I say with a grain of salt of 14-year-old René.
Right. I mean, there are some things that came out of GT that are pretty cool. I mean, René, I think you mentioned before we started recording, or earlier, you said, Vegeta with a mustache. Like, that's great.
Yeah. Or the Golden Ozaru. Heck yeah. I still think that should be a thing. They should bring that to Super. They turn into the Ozaru, and then there's like, you know what? You know what this needs? Super Saiyan, baby! Bam! I
do have one of those figures that I got in Japan, of one of those. Actually, no, it's not a Golden Ozaru. It's Vegeta after he's been taken over by, I think he's called Ball, where he's been taken over by an alien. I didn't really watch enough GT to actually be able to. Are you talking
about when he got taken over by Baby?
Baby,
that's what it is. Yes.
So the names change in the manga, they use the kind of the Japanese names almost, but because some of the names are different, like Samasu is just Samas. Stuff like that still throws me off a little bit, even after knowing Dragon Ball so much. Because I'm so used to the name that the anime has.
Yeah.
So when they talk about like techniques and stuff, I'm like, wait, which one? What technique is this? I don't like what is it? The evil containment, evil containment wave.
Oh, the thing with the rice cooker.
Yeah. They call it by its name because they recently bring it up when they're trying to fight Samasu.
It's like oh goodness gracious.
Yeah, I don't remember the Japanese name, and I just read it like 2 weeks ago. So stuff like that still throws me off.
The
so
Mafuba.
Yeah, there you go.
Or the Mafuba, however you want to pronounce it. Yeah. I love that it's one word in Japanese, and then it's not even like a long word, but they're like, it's the evil containment wave.
It's a literal translation in some capacity, right?
Yeah.
And
it is.
the one thing I'll say about GT, I think the lesson that using the Dragon Ball so much actually polluted them, and like I thought that was a cool concept, that there was actually consequences to using the Dragon Balls to solve all our problems. Our problems, me and the gang. But
yeah.
I don't know that like the execution maybe it doesn't work as much to me now. I'm sure it did when I was younger, because Super Saiyan 4, when they do a fusion dance and they're like Super Saiyan 4, what is it, Gogeta Super Saiyan 4?
Yeah.
With the Big Bang Kamehameha, like that was a cool.
Gogeta with the fusion dance, Vegito's with the earrings.
Yeah.
Gotcha. See, I can never keep that straight. I can never keep that stuff straight.
Vegito styles, Gogeta. I don't know.
I see. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess I don't know. Do you guys have any? We're almost running out of tape here. So, do you guys have any final thoughts? I mean, you're going to continue to read Dragon Ball Super at least probably until it gets bad. Which who knows what the definition of bad is? But what are your final thoughts on Dragon Ball, like in general? I know we didn't talk too much about like some of the older stuff, but I mean, obviously it all matters. It's all very good stuff. I think maybe after I finish One Piece, I'll go back and reread all of Dragon Ball Dragon Ball from the beginning, just to say that I did.
I'll join you for that one.
Okay,
that's a good
okay,
decision.
that could be a fun challenge.
That's a good decision.
Yeah, you guys, we've talked about a lot of different stuff. I mean, final thoughts on Dragon Ball in general. René, let's start with you.
So Dragon Ball, obviously, it was a game changer. It changed Jump and shonen manga for forever. That is just a fact. And it's one of the most popular series to come out of Japan. And it started as a gag manga and then became the epitome of shonen. Everybody, any shonen manga that comes out, they always relate it back to Dragon Ball because it changed everything. It was something that we'd never seen before, and it's highly unlikely we're going to see something that has that same kind of impact, even with the impact of the big three and My Hero Academia. Dragon Ball is something that's always going to be there. Everyone's going to always throw back to. And there's a million reasons to love it, and there's a million reasons to hate it. But at the end of the day, it's still impactful. And if you give it time, it's always fun, whether or not you enjoy it or not.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Danny? Final thoughts, and maybe at the end here, I'll let you leak a little bit of your hot takes because I know you have a couple in your notes at least.
Oh yeah.
Final thoughts on Dragon Ball.
No, I mean, I think I definitely agree with Renee. I think the only thing I'll say is if you haven't watched any Dragon Ball Super, anything, go ahead and watch the Broly movie. Because I think that's what brought new life in. I believe the series was over. Like they had announced the manga's over. As soon as Super gets to that point, it'll be done. But I think the movie was so successful that it gave new life to whoever's like, okay, I guess we can have Akira Toriyama still write some more, maybe make more movies in the future. But it just, and bringing Broly into the canon, like I think a lot of people have been waiting a long time for that, right? We had those early Broly movies that it just kind of kept getting worse as they went by. But just the way they brought him in and the way they set him up, like, it's something that we can build on for the future. So yeah, if you need a good point, go watch that. That's what I recommend, because it really encapsulates everything that is Dragon Ball, like the fights, the gags, like everything. It's part of that.
Absolutely. I mean, Dragon Ball to me is just it's the it's the default manga. It's the default anime, and in my mind, I think that's probably only because, like you other two, we grew up on it. It's something that like started us down this path of maybe reading and consuming anime and manga. But to me, like, all of the characters are so distinct. They're so unique. They are so, stereotypical in a lot of ways of characters that you see now. It's like the Seinfeld effect, where you watch something else and you go back to the thing that it was based on and you didn't realize that was the thing. And so it doesn't feel nearly as rich. But, if you started with Dragon Ball and you started with Dragon Ball Z, man, like, those characters are so compelling from beginning to end. And I think even now, like, we've talked about Super a whole bunch. Even now, there are still like angles to find in these characters that have been established for almost 30 years, 40 years almost, and so it's wild to see them actually, like Akira Toriyama, still be able to develop these characters well. And even though, I think one of my gripes with Super is that all the side characters literally get put to the side after a certain point, right? Like there's a moment where Piccolo and Tien and Yamcha and Krillin, they'll show up, and even the androids will show up and they'll fight, and then they'll go, oh, well, I guess now it's Goku and Vegeta's time. They're going to do all the fighting. Which is kind of a bummer because those side characters really enrich the story, especially in arcs like the Frieza saga. There was so, like, everyone was kind of on even ground until Goku went Super Saiyan. And so it was really interesting to see them all approach different fights in different ways. And it's kind of a bummer to see that they can't power up themselves because they're not Super Saiyan. But nonetheless, like, these characters still exist, and when they do get their moments to shine, even for a handful of pages, it's fantastic, and it's still as amazing as those issues way back then. So I think, like, this is almost like I wouldn't say timeless, but it is a very classic book to me, and I'll always have fond memories of it. And I think that's what keeps me going, and it's probably nostalgia and all that, but really, I think if you threw someone in at Dragon Ball Z and said, just power through, read these 40 volumes or something, I think they would get as much enjoyment out of it as I think all three of us have.
I believe it's 23 for Dragon Ball Z.
Okay, so it's not even that hard. See, I have been jaded by reading things like One Piece and Bleach that I think that everything is just 70 volumes long. I mean, I know that One Piece is longer than that, but even still, I just assume any well-established series is like 40 to 50 to 60 volumes long. But Dragon Ball is a whole other thing. Nonetheless, I thank you guys for your time today. This has been super fun. I guess to wrap things up here, Danny, where can people find you on the internet if they want to check out more of your stuff?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Echo Spider, and you can check out my podcast at Next Issue Pod. We're a little bit slow putting out stuff because there hadn't been comics and stuff coming out, but we're bringing a new episode where we talk about a few news, the Snyder Cut, stuff like that. So keep on the lookout for that.
Very cool. And we'll make sure to put all that stuff in the show notes. For us, I guess you can follow René at Rodrigo29. You can follow me at Mike Rappin, and you can follow the show at IRCB Podcast, and on Twitter and Instagram, all the normal places.
This show and our many subscriber-only episodes are powered by fans like you on Patreon. You can join now at patreon.com/IRCB Podcast. And if you haven't already, please rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You don't have to give us 5 stars, but we would super appreciate it.
You can join us on Discord at ircbpodcast.com/Discord, and make sure to tell a friend or two about the show. Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all the music for our show. Xander is a very cool guy, someone who gives very good high fives. He also edits the show. I want to say thank you to Danny and René for being on this episode. Thank you to the listeners out there for listening. And until next time, comics are good, and so are you. And I realize I never gave Danny a chance to do his hot takes. So, Danny, if you want to go and give your hot takes, what's your biggest hot take you got on your list?
I think the biggest hot take is that Goku is kind of a piece of trash.
We got. I'm gonna hit stop recording and hang up this call right now.
He's a bad dad because Piccolo raised Gohan.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is a pretty cold take if you ask me, but keep going.
Well, listen,
they get t-shirts.
So that's pretty normal. But then in Dragon Ball Super, he's even encouraging Vegeta to be a bad dad because he's like, "Hey, come on, let's go train." And Vegeta's like,
Yeah,
"No, my daughter's about to be born. Like, I have to be here." He's like, "You're a buzzkill or whatever." And then he almost erased 11 universes because he wanted to fight. Like, he is kind of a trash man that just wants to fight.
He is very simple minded. Or like one track mind, I guess. That's the way that I've always thought of Goku.
Yeah.
Does that make him a bad dad? Probably. But he's still the hero of the story, Danny.
Not to me. Vegeta, my father, is the hero of the story.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think I saw in your notes, I think Vegeta definitely does have the more compelling storyline, especially recently, which I wonder if that is Toriyama trying to do something different with the series. But René, I want to hear your reactions to this really quick before we wrap now.
Dude, Vegeta sucks.
Whoa! You got to back that up with something.
I don't actually care.
Rude. I
was like, my favorite's Crillon, honestly, because
okay.
He's the strongest human. He's a ball of laughs. He just keeps on trucking. He's always around. He's definitely reached his participation badge.
Oh yeah, he's a good dad.
Yeah, he's a good dad, and he's probably a terrible cop because he refuses to fly around. He still uses his scooter.
So René, real quick, how do you think Crillon talked Android 18 into calling their daughter by his ex-girlfriend's name?
Well, she didn't know. She wouldn't know, right?
That's still kind of a shitty move. Like, somebody never brought it up.
Same thing. Is it really?
Yeah, her name
from the Garlic Jr. saga.
Yeah, her name was Marin, and Krillon's daughter's name is Marin. And I was like, wait a minute.
Oh man, yeah.
That's wild. That's wild.
Oh man, I guess I never noticed that. I guess to answer that, I don't think I care about that one either.
Oh, René.
I mean, it was probably editorial though. Garlic Jr. doesn't exist in the manga.
Yeah,
so.
That's true.
It's a movie thing. So I mean, very Akira Toriyama. Someone brought it up to Akira Toriyama after he's like, "Well, look, it's already in the magazine." And then they're like, "You can fix that before we put out the graphic novel." It's already in the magazine. Look, Toriyama don't care. René don't care.
I see.
Speaking for Toriyama right now. That's terrible.